Imagine a city floating on water, a place where the sun god was fed with blood and the stars were believed to move only because men were sacrificed. This was Tenochtitlan, a shimmering island metropolis built on a lake, surrounded by mountains, filled with temples that pierced the clouds. When the Spanish conquistadors first saw it in 1519, they thought they had stumbled upon a vision of paradise, or perhaps hell itself. Marble palaces, gardens that hung over water, causeways stretching like silver veins across the lake. A civilization of millions, organized, brilliant, and terrifying. But within just 2 years, this empire, one of the greatest ever built in the Americas, vanished. Its temples burned, its gods silenced, its people enslaved or sacrificed to a new faith. How could a civilization so advanced, so disciplined, so deeply spiritual, collapse so fast? The answer lies not only in war and steel, but in something deeper, a prophecy, a paradox, and the shadow of fate that the Aztecs themselves helped create. The birth of a warrior nation. Before the Aztecs became rulers, they were wanderers, outcasts searching for a home. For generations, their ancestors roamed the valleys of central Mexico, guided by visions and divine signs. According to legend, their god Huitzilopochtli, the god of the sun and war, promised them a homeland. They would find it where an eagle perched upon a cactus devouring a serpent. That image, a sacred symbol of destiny, led them to the swamps of Lake Texcoco around 1325. Most saw the place as uninhabitable, a marshland filled with reeds and mosquitoes. But the Aztecs saw something else and a challenge, and in that mud they began to build. They constructed artificial islands called chinampas, interlacing them with canals. Each new platform made the city rise higher above the lake. It was more than engineering, it was an act of faith. Every stone laid was an offering to the gods who watched them grow stronger. The Aztecs became a warrior people not by choice, but by necessity. Surrounded by stronger tribes, they learned that survival depended on discipline, order, and sacrifice. And slowly, through battle and diplomacy, they turned their fragile city into a fortress of power and belief. Tenochtitlan, the floating empire. By the early 1400s, Tenochtitlan had transformed into the beating heart of an empire, a metropolis of more than 200,000 people, larger than London or Paris at the time. Its streets were lined with white stucco temples, marketplaces bursting with color, and palaces shimmering with obsidian and gold. Canals acted as streets where canoes glided like silent ghosts. At its center rose the Templo Mayor, a massive double pyramid dedicated to the gods of war and rain. On its summit, priests offered human hearts to keep the cosmos alive. To the Aztecs, sacrifice was not cruelty, it was duty. They believed the universe demanded nourishment, that the sun itself would die if men stopped feeding it blood. Their empire extended across the Valley of Mexico through conquest and tribute. Gold, cacao, feathers, jade, obsidian, all flowed into Tenochtitlan like rivers feeding an ocean. But with greatness came arrogance and fear. If you're fascinated by how civilizations rise and vanish, hit follow, because here, every story hides a secret that changed the world. The shadow of prophecy. The Aztecs believed their gods had created the world 5 times, and that each era ended in catastrophe. They saw themselves living in the 5th sun, the last world, and they feared it would one day collapse like the others. This belief shaped everything, their wars, their rituals, their politics. They saw omens in comets, eclipses, and dreams. Even emperors trembled before the will of the gods. In the late 15th century, a new ruler rose, Montezuma II, a priest-king obsessed with fate. He was brilliant but haunted. Every decision he made was filtered through signs, stars, and prophecies. And then, one day, strange rumors reached him. White-skinned men had landed on the eastern coast. They wore metal armor that gleamed like mirrors. They rode beasts no one had ever seen, horses. And some said one of them looked like a god. To Montezuma, this was not coincidence. It was prophecy. Because the Aztecs believed their god Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, would one day return from the east, a bearded, pale god who would reclaim his throne. And so, when Hernán Cortes arrived in 1519, the empire's destiny began to twist. The encounter. Cortes was not a god. He was a Spanish soldier hungry for power, gold, and glory, but he was also cunning, and he knew how to exploit belief. When the Spaniards entered the Valley of Mexico, Montezuma sent envoys bearing gifts, gold, feathers, and words of respect. Instead of satisfying Cortes, it ignited his greed. He marched toward the capital, gathering native allies who despised Aztec rule. When he finally stood before Tenochtitlan, the conquistadors were stunned. A city of canals and temples shimmered before them, floating like a dream. Even the battle-hardened soldiers whispered that it was more beautiful than anything in Europe. Montezuma welcomed them as honored guests, or perhaps as gods. He housed them in his palace, fed them, and listened to their words. But the Spaniards saw weakness in reverence. They seized the emperor, and for the first time, the Sun King of Tenochtitlan became a prisoner in his own city. What happened next was chaos. Rituals were banned, and temples were desecrated. Blood ran through the canals not as offering, but as vengeance. The Night of Sorrows. In 1520, rebellion erupted. The priests and warriors could no longer tolerate the insult. As Cortes left the city to face rival Spaniards, his men slaughtered Aztec nobles during a sacred festival. The city exploded in fury. When Cortes returned, the empire was on fire. Montezuma tried to speak to his people, but stones and arrows struck him down. The god king was dead, and with him the fragile balance of faith shattered. The Spaniards fled the city in panic, dragging gold and wounded men through the darkness. Hundreds drowned in the lake under the weight of their stolen treasure. This night would be remembered as La Noche Triste, the Night of Sorrows. But the victory was short-lived. The Aztecs had won the battle, yet their destiny had already been poisoned. The invisible enemy. Not all conquerors carry swords. Some arrive unseen, inside the blood. With the Spaniards came smallpox, a disease the Aztecs had never known. It spread like wildfire through Tenochtitlan's narrow streets. In weeks, tens of thousands were dead. Entire families vanished overnight. The empire, once disciplined and proud, was crippled. Its armies could not fight. Its priests could not pray fast enough. Its gods remained silent. When Cortes returned months later, he found a city of corpses. He besieged the ruins for 93 days. Canals filled with blood, temples crumbled under cannon fire, and on August 13, 1521, Tenochtitlan fell. The empire of the Aztecs, a civilization that had taken centuries to build, was gone, destroyed not only by steel and greed, but by faith, prophecy, and the invisible hand of destiny. If stories like this remind you how fragile greatness can be, like this video and subscribe for more timeless mysteries that shaped our world. Yet even in death, the Aztecs refused to vanish. Their language, Nahuatl, still flows through Mexico's veins. Their symbols, the eagle, the cactus, the serpent, now adorn the flag of a modern nation. Their pyramids still rise, defying time, whispering to those who listen. What remains of the Aztecs is not just ruins, and it's a mirror, a reminder of how belief can both elevate and destroy. They built an empire on faith, and that same faith sealed their fate. But perhaps that was the point all along. Because for the Aztecs, life was not about escaping death, it was about giving it meaning. Each sacrifice, each battle, each offering was a way to keep the sun alive. And maybe in some way, it still burns, not above them, but within us. History calls it the fall of the Aztec Empire, but to understand them, you must see it differently. Empires collapse when their bodies break, but the Aztecs built theirs on something eternal, myth. Their temples may have crumbled, but their vision of the universe, cyclical, sacred, alive, survived conquest. You can see it in modern festivals, in the Day of the Dead, in every offering placed before a candle. The Aztecs believed time was not linear, but circular. That endings are simply beginnings disguised. So perhaps Tenochtitlan did not fall. Perhaps it transformed. The blood of its warriors, the songs of its priests, the dreams of its people, all became the heartbeat of Mexico. And if you stand on the ruins of the great temple today, beneath the noise of modern life, you might still hear it. The echo of drums, the whisper of feathers, the rhythm of a sun that refuses to die. Because the empire of the Aztecs was never truly destroyed. It was reborn in memory, in myth, and in the eternal mystery of the world.